To, I think, Arnold's credit, he's like, nothing. There's nothing you could have done better. It took me a really long time to forgive myself, to forgive the whole situation. I think there will always be.
This is the story of Maria Shriver, Kennedy royalty and award-winning journalist who spent 25 years married to one of the most famous men on the planet, who, before having her entire world pulled under her by a secret that had been buried for 14 years. And at 70, she finally told us what that actually felt like. One rule held that marriage together in Maria's mind, and that rule was simple. The home was sacred. The Brentwood mansion where she raised 4 children, where she built her family, where she believed her husband understood the difference between the chaos of Hollywood and the one place that was supposed to be protected. That space was supposed to be untouchable. For 25 years, Maria believed Arnold respected that line. He did not. One afternoon in early 2011, Maria pulled her housekeeper aside and asked a question she already suspected the answer to. The woman who had cleaned her home for over a decade, who had watched her children grow up and shared holidays and ordinary Tuesday mornings with that family, looked Maria in the eye and confirmed what would end the marriage in a single conversation. The housekeeper, the child, the 14 years of silence, the other women who had come before, what unfolded inside that Brentwood mansion would turn one of America's most famous marriages into a decade-long legal battle that cost Arnold nearly everything he believed he had secured. The real question that nobody fully answered until now is why Maria stayed through scandal after scandal and why she defended him the way she did. That answer starts in 1977, when a Kennedy woman fell for an Austrian bodybuilder and made her entire family believe he was worth the risk. August 1977, the Robert F. Kennedy Pro-Celebrity Tennis Tournament in Forest Hills, New York, and Maria Shriver was 21 years old. Growing up inside the most recognizable political family in America had shaped her entire worldview, and the weight of that legacy followed her everywhere. Her mother was Eunice Kennedy Shriver, sister of President John F. Kennedy, and her uncles were Bobby and Ted Kennedy. Every expectation placed on Maria's shoulders pointed toward a particular kind of life: public service, purpose, and a partner who understood what it meant to carry the Kennedy name. And then her brother, Bobby Jr., introduced her to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and none of those expectations survived the introduction. Arnold was 30 years old at that point, the reigning Mr. Olympia and the most famous bodybuilder alive, with an accent so thick that Hollywood executives had already told him he would never become a leading man. None of that stopped Maria from seeing something the rest of her family missed, or at least something she chose to believe in. Maria's mother, Eunice, was skeptical from the start, and Uncle Ted turned the whole situation into material for family dinners at Hyannisport, where the whispers about this Austrian weightlifter who could barely pronounce the family name were anything but quiet. What nobody expected was that Maria wouldn't care. Arnold was ambitious in a way that matched her own drive, built from nothing into a recognizable brand, fearless in the way that only people with nothing to lose can afford to be, and he made her laugh. Nearly a decade of dating followed before he proposed. On April 26, 1986, Maria walked down the aisle at the Kennedy compound in Hyannis, Massachusetts, wearing a Mark Bowen for Dior gown with an 11-foot train in front of 450 guests that included Oprah Winfrey, who read a poem, Carlene Kennedy serving as maid of honor, Andy Warhol, and Barbara Walters. Coverage of that wedding read like a royal event because in America, that is exactly what the Kennedys represented. Maria had bet everything on Arnold, and for a while, the bet looked like it had paid off. The 15 years after that wedding built the life Maria had always pictured. Catherine arrived in 1989, Christina in 1991, Patrick in 1993, and Christopher in 1997, 4 children across 8 years, while Maria balanced motherhood with a career at NBC News that earned her a Peabody Award and an Emmy. Arnold, at the same time, transformed himself into the biggest action star on the planet, the Terminator, Total Recall, True Lies, pulling in $20 million per film and landing on magazine covers worldwide. The accent Hollywood said would hold him back became the signature that made him impossible to forget. But here's the thing about that picture-perfect timeline. In early 1997, both Maria and their housekeeper Mildred Baena were pregnant at the same time. Maria was carrying her fourth child, Christopher, moving through all the exhaustion and vulnerability that comes with a fourth pregnancy, while running a household and supporting a husband whose ambitions kept expanding. Mildred was also pregnant, working under the same roof, cleaning the same rooms, watching Maria's body change while concealing the truth about her own. Christopher Schwarzenegger came into the world on September 27, 1997, and Joseph Baena followed 5 days later, on October 2nd. Both children conceived under the same roof, both mothers carrying Arnold's sons through the same hallways, and only 2 people in that entire household understood what that actually meant. Mildred told everyone her husband, Rogelio, was Joseph's father, and Rogelio believed it fully, raising the child as his own, attending Little League games, watching this child grow up with no reason to question what he saw. That changed in 2008 when Joseph stopped looking like Rogelio and started looking unmistakably like someone else. Rogelio demanded answers, the marriage between them and Mildred ended, but even then the secret stayed locked inside the walls of that Brentwood estate. Arnold later claimed he had only begun to suspect as he watched Joseph grow up and noticed the resemblance take shape over time, the jawline, the build, the way the boy carried himself, and throughout it all, Arnold paid child support in secret, helped Mildred financially with a word to Maria, and watched Joseph grow up at the same birthday parties as his other 4 children, swimming in the same pool and eating in the same kitchen while Maria had no idea. Mildred Baena was not where this story began, and understanding that matters. Brigitte Nielsen co-starred with Arnold in Red Sonja in 1985, a film that shot while Arnold was already engaged to Maria and while the 2 of them were actively planning their Kennedy compound wedding. Nielsen confirmed the affair publicly in 2008, without apology and without ambiguity, stating what had happened as a simple matter of record. Arnold had cheated on Maria before they even made it down the aisle. Then there was Gigi Goyette, who claimed an on-and-off relationship with Arnold spanning over a decade, one she said began when she was 16 years old and continued into the early years of his marriage to Maria. These are allegations rather than proven facts, but the accumulation of them tells a story, and that story continued in 2003 when 6 women came forward during what the press labeled Gropegate, accusing Arnold of unwanted touching, with a 7th following later. These were not affairs. They were accusations of a man who apparently believed his fame and his physique gave him permission to treat women however he chose. Maria defended him through it all. Every time, she stood beside him, vouched for his character with her family name attached, and kept the marriage moving forward. Now circle back to that 1997 timeline, because the weight of it compounds when you lay it all out at once. While Maria was pregnant with Christopher, Arnold had already gotten Mildred pregnant. While Maria was recovering from childbirth, Mildred was recovering from childbirth down the hall. While Maria's newborn son was learning to walk and talk, Arnold's other son was doing the same thing in the same spaces, and the 2 boys played together for years without knowing they shared a father. Maria looked at Joseph dozens of times without seeing what Arnold and Mildred saw every day.
By early 2011, Arnold had just wrapped his 2nd term as governor of California, and the family was supposed to be stepping into something new. The political years were behind him, Arnold was preparing his return to Hollywood, and Maria was looking forward to having her husband back after nearly a decade of public service. But something had been working on her for months, and she could not push it away anymore. Joseph Baena was 13 years old by then, no longer a small child whose features were still forming, and teenagers start to look like their parents in ways that toddlers simply do not. The resemblance between Joseph and Maria's own sons had become something other people were noticing too, and the whispers had reached her. She had pushed them back, told herself she was imagining things, reminded herself that Mildred was a trusted member of the household who would not do something like this. The doubt kept coming back anyway. One afternoon, Maria pulled Mildred aside and asked the question directly. Was Joseph Arnold's son? Mildred broke down. No more lies, no more deflection. She told Maria the truth that had been carefully hidden for 14 years, and Maria moved out of the Brentwood mansion immediately after that conversation. Therapy followed, along with a grip on her Catholic faith and counsel from priests and rabbis, from anyone who could help her make sense of what her life had become. The losses stacked on top of each other in a way that was almost incomprehensible. Her mother, Eunice, had passed away in 2009. Her father, Sergeant, had died just months earlier, in January 2011. And now her marriage, her identity, and the story she had been telling herself for 25 years were gone in a single afternoon. Maria later shared that she had lost her father, her marriage, her job, and her sense of self all within that same short window of time, and that she had spent those months trying to figure out who she was outside of every role she had played for other people. On May 9, 2011, Maria and Arnold released a joint statement announcing their separation, carefully worded and full of requests for privacy, the kind of announcement that reads like a standard Hollywood split if you don't know what's underneath it. 8 days later, the floor opened up. On May 17, 2011, the Los Angeles Times broke the story about Mildred Boehner and Joseph, and Arnold issued his own statement that same night, confirming that he had fathered a child with a household employee more than a decade earlier. The humiliation landed in full public view. Maria Shriver, Kennedy royalty and award-winning journalist and former First Lady of California, became the woman whose husband had a secret child with the housekeeper, and every tabloid in the world ran with it, while late-night comedians turned it into material. Every person Maria had ever defended Arnold to was now watching this unfold. The money made the situation even grinding. No prenup had ever been signed, which meant California community property law applied, and Maria was entitled to half of everything Arnold had earned across their 25-year marriage: the Terminator franchise money, the Total Recall money, the True Lies money, the real estate and the businesses. Estimates placed the total somewhere between $300 and $400 million. Maria filed for divorce on July 1, 2011, expecting, reasonably, that the process would move at some reasonable pace given how clear-cut the circumstances were. The divorce was not finalized until December 28, 2021, more than 10 years after she filed, making it one of the longest celebrity divorces on record. Every year it dragged on was another year Maria remained legally attached to the man who had built a second life inside her first one. Maria Shriver did not vanish after 2011, and that matters more than anything else in this story. By 2017, while the divorce was still grinding through the legal system, she had launched the Sunday paper, beginning as a weekly newsletter before becoming a full media brand built around resilience and faith and the things that hold their value when everything else falls apart. Her 2018 book, I've Been Thinking, became a bestseller, and her 2022 follow-up, Radical Acceptance, did the same. Her father, Sergeant, had died of Alzheimer's disease, and rather than letting that grief close around her, she channeled it into building the women's Alzheimer's movement, funding research and becoming an advocate in a space that needed one. A return to NBC as a special anchor on The Today Show followed, and professionally she stepped back into the identity she had before the governorship years swallowed her career. At some point, she also dropped Schwarzenegger from her professional name entirely. She became Maria again, the journalist, the Kennedy, the woman who had walked through something that would have permanently defined most people and chose to build something else on the other side of it. In recent years, she has reportedly been in a relationship with Jeff Zucker, the former CNN president, though she keeps that part of her life private and off red carpets, conducted entirely on her own terms. In 2023, Arnold released a Netflix documentary simply called Arnold, and in it he described the affair with Mildred as the biggest failure of his life, calling the days he told Maria the hardest day he had ever lived through. Full responsibility, he said. He had screwed up. No deflection, no reframing, just the admission that what he did was wrong and that the damage was real. For more than a decade of Maria carrying this story largely in silence while Arnold moved forward with his life, he finally said out loud what she had known since that afternoon in early 2011. And today, the two of them co-parent their children peacefully, with Maria having said she has forgiven him, though she has made clear that forgiveness and forgetting are not the same thing. Joseph Boehner has built a relationship with his half-siblings, and the family has found a way to move into the future that does not require pretending the past was something other than what it was. 25 years, 4 children, a 14-year secret, a 10-year divorce, and somewhere between $300 and $400 million divided between two people who never signed a prenup. Maria Shriver did not just survive one of the most publicly humiliating betrayals in celebrity history, she rebuilt herself on the other side of it, with her name intact and her head up, while Arnold spent years explaining decisions he made when he believed no one would ever find out. Not once did she attack him publicly, not one vengeful interview, not one attempt to turn her children against their father. His own choices carried all the weight of everything she never needed to say. And at 70 years old, the woman who once sat alone wondering who she was without her marriage and her parents and her career has written a book, built a movement, and come back to herself in a way that took everything she had. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know which part of this story hit you hardest. If this video stayed with you, hit that subscribe button because there's more coming that you will not want to miss.